The world of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild has some impeccable atmosphere. The art style is real enough for one to feel a part of the game's moments, but fantastical enough to accentuate one's experience with greater poignancy. The highs and lows alike feel more pure of essence and impactful. Hebra's mountains gleam starkly with the dark gray of stone and a bright snowy white. The sharp, desaturated contrast makes the air feel crisp. Perfect dustings of icy wind obscure far distances with a chill. Little falling flakes give motion to the snow and a sense of place to the player. Gerudo's desert shimmers unbearable with an immensity of sand, a sea of tan. Hefty, low-lying clouds of grit meander across a horizon comprised of barren, guideless dunes. The free and helpless blue sky stretches this empty world into a limitless expanse. Every place in this world has such artistic qualities. There was great care taken and creativity given in expressing all of its landscapes. I, as the player, want any excuse I can find to be a part of this world for a little longer. Many criticize the game's empty, content-free locations, often rightly so. Nevertheless, the world itself is offensively beautiful, preciously evocative. It is alive, and you are in it. That is, until you hit the world border and are faced with the message direct from the game itself that you can't go any farther. The immersion goes hollow in an instant. The puppet's strings are cut. The cut-out cardboard facade falls down. I do not insist on an infinite world. Breath of the Wild is already quite big. I just wonder if these limits could have been included with a bit better tact, a bit more showmanship. Imagination and curiosity is what fills the horizon of such a video game as this. What one finds at the end of the road is often underwhelming, but the reward is not always the point. The pleasure of exploring Hyrule is found in the wonder one feels upon each new precipice. The adventuring itself holds so much of the game's allure. Like I said, it's a world I just want an excuse to exist in for a while. Tangible rewards do matter, and I've got my thoughts about them as well. Yet the immersive aspect of it all relies not on the tangible, but on that sense of something more out there undiscovered. That feeling is the thing that gets damaged by hard, explicit world barriers. If I think about my younger days of playing Ocarina of Time, somehow the world felt big. It felt bigger than it looked, that's for sure. There were less than a real-world village's worth of people and houses. There were flat tree walls. Different regions were mere minutes away from each other. And yet, I felt there was a greater world of which I was a part of. My imagination filled out what the game could not. Ocarina of Time had the luxury of setting one's expectations early on in the game about such things as tree walls, playable areas, and barriers. So one naturally incorporated their imagination in accordance to the way the game already worked. And somehow from that relatively limited world, a feeling of grandeur emerged. And that's for a simple reason. Humans are stupid. Okay, it's because humans have wonderful imaginations. I didn't experience the game simply as is, and I don't think other people did either. I experienced the game with a strange layer of wonderment on top. Something all my own. Something between the now I saw and the hint of what could be. The game gave me a breadcrumb trail of what the world was, and my adventure made it into something more. That sensation is a constant companion of exploring Breath of the Wild's world, which makes the contrast all the worse when you finally hit that world barrier. The game was not a world of barriers and tree walls. It was an openness of places for the eyes to wonder of and for the feet to go. The expectations were set for freedom, and then later refuted with a surprise of restriction. It's all right, it's just a moment. Although not quite just a moment. The way it contrasts with the rest of the game leaves the player with a bit of disillusionment. One can no longer playfully imagine a greater world out there. They have smacked headfirst into undeniable proof that the game world is just a sandbox, confined by its frame, even if it is a pretty big one. I think that, albeit silly impression of a greater imagined world should be allowed to be retained. It's an illusion, but an artistic one that is part of all art as the suspension of disbelief. So, how does a designer go about safeguarding this illusion? We can't make the world infinite. Even with procedurally generated terrain, the novelty would soon wear thin. In a game like Minecraft, the seemingly infinite horizon fits with its style of play. In Breath of the Wild, not so much. What I propose is a bit of trickery. That or just a bit of set dressing to the experience. Intertwining the characteristics of the environment with the world borders might have helped. In the Gerudo Desert, let there be a region called the Endless Sands, where sandstorms rage, ceaseless and impassable. On the ocean, let the waters get choppy and where the weather get bad, and force Link back to shore. Perhaps we could even drown him out there, with a raft sinking wave or whatnot. Up in the snowy mountains, let there be snowstorms that blind Link from seeing very far. Let the weather be so cold that none of his gear can help to keep him warm and alive. Ideally, we might somewhat connect the landscapes of Hebra and Gerudo Highlands, so to block off the entire left border of the map. In the due north, perhaps the Lost Woods could have been extended all the way to the border, utilizing that area's pre-existing impenetrability. These are pretty big map changes, I know. They are not ideas for taking the map as is and altering it after the fact. Rather, this is how a designer might preemptively sculpt the outside reaches of the map to cultivate a more immersive experience. I want that illusion of a real world and for it to persist as much and for as long as possible. No big unnatural valleys curving around the north and west portions of the map. No simple and direct text appearing on screen giving the game away. It should be noted that this would introduce a bit of ambiguity, and thus the possibility for player confusion. Perhaps this could be remedied with a bit starker of clarity on the Sheikah Slate's map, between what's accessible and what's out of bounds. The immersion survives much better if the map grays out sharply, versus the game physically pushing the player character away. Hopefully players that get confused will just move on, back to other things that they understand or that capture their curiosity. It's not too wise to confuse people too much. That might make them less curious. Yet a balance can be struck. It might be especially clear if the endless sandstorm, say, slows Link down, gradually whites out the player's screen, and leaves Link back on the ground, inbounds, with one heart less of health. This would be similar to what happens when Link drowns or when Link falls into the black void of which exists at the bottom of many of the Sheikah shrines. A similar thing could happen in the mountains, with the blinding snows encroaching in and swallowing him, truly whiting out the screen. Another, trickier method would be to pull some spatial orientation shenanigans. If you designed the out-of-bounds terrain for it, you could secretly teleport or gradually transition the player from one patch of terrain to another. In this way, they would be unknowingly turned around and sent back, heading in the direction that they just came from. I'm thinking especially of the desert, where a sandstorm could be used to add a layer of visual imperceptibility. You could also tweak the player inputs or warp the terrain so that they always end up walking back inbounds, even if they try to keep a straight line. Perhaps this method would necessitate some NPC saying that no one can navigate those sands, or whatnot. Just so people are less likely to punish themselves by plunging in repeatedly. All of this might seem to be more effort than it's worth, but the story of a game, the story of the gameplay itself, is partly written by the player's own imagination. It's a cooperative effort. You never want to give the game away and reveal that it's not real. That's no fun. Beyond the tangible game objects, we players have envisioned kingdoms and greater populations and unseen locations. Games are things that dwell in the wide expanse of the mind, not just the dry details of physical phenomena. They only gain their true breadth when a player completes the circuit, when the player plays it and imagines it for themselves. Let the dream linger a little longer. In a player's mind, there might truly be lands beyond the lands that they tread upon. That's the beautiful dream of adventure, after all. Let us foster it. If you would like to contribute to me financially, you can do so via my Patreon. There's a link on my channel page.